Hello, it's Bruce here again. This is April 4th, 2020, and instead of being outside getting the yard tidied up for springtime, it's been snowing all morning here in Michigan, so I'm once again at the modeling bench. And I'm working on a Wheelworks white metal kit for a logging truck. And I thought I would do this video because if you've never done one of the white metal castings for cars and trucks and bulldozers and so forth, I thought it might be of interest to you to see what they were like. The castings up until this point, what I've done is tried to take the majority of any flash off, and there really wasn't much. Although I just discovered there's a little bit more on the back of this engine compartment. This is the hood of the truck, and right here on the back there's a bump that I missed. I'm looking at all the edges on things like the doors and the windows and the frame and everything else, and never looked on the back of this. So I'm going to have to tidy that up with a file in a few minutes. What I've done so far is spray painted all the parts with black rattle can paint. So all the little pieces are in here. And again, if you've never seen them, there's quite a few. Plus the ones that I have here on the modeling surface already, which are primarily the cab parts. So let me just zoom in, and I'll try to remember to zoom back out. But here's basically the floor of the cab plus the fenders and so forth. I already showed you the engine compartment. There's the rear. This is the actual windshield, which I've already installed. I did that on one of my videos where I was showing you how to use this Testors Clear Parts Cement, which is what I use to make the window there. So that window's done. In the rear of the cab, that window's done also using the Testors. And the doors are here. I'm going to leave those windows down. The roof, steering wheel, and this is the dashboard. I couldn't find anything in the box that looked like it was the steering column that you're supposed to attach to the steering wheel, so I used a piece of stainless steel wire, drilled a hole in the center of the steering wheel and have that mounted. Everything will be either gray or black except for the headlights, which I've painted a aluminum color, and they're drying right now. So all the parts are here, and your adhesive of choice is going to be super glue, and for the most part I'll use the gel type, at least to get the parts sticking together, and then come back with the liquid type to toughen up those joints. I tend to always use the Loctite brand. It rarely dries up in the bottle, even if I don't use it for a year or more at a time. So I do like it. I, again, don't ever apply the glue directly from the bottle. I put it on a piece of wax paper, little drop, and then I come back with my favorite ACC applicator, which is an old pin vise with an actual sewing pin with the head cut off and bent at a little bit of an angle. So I dip that down into the ACC, pick a little bit up, and apply it to the model. And if it starts to build up on that, you just take a razor blade and scrape it off. But this has been the way I've applied ACC forever. So that's it. I am going to do this in stages. Don't want you to have to painfully watch as Mr. Fumblefingers keeps knocking pieces back off and has to try to control the shake in his hands. The instructions are brief by anybody's standards, so it's mostly a isometric drawing there and a little bit of verbiage which might say something like, glue both doors, step one, glue both doors to the rear of the cab, and so forth. So you really have to rely more on the diagram than anything else. But when they do come together, they do make a nice looking vehicle. And the thing about Wheelworks and some of the other white metal manufacturers of old is that they tended to model vehicles that weren't widely found anywhere else. So I probably have 24 white metal kits for cars and trucks and bulldozers and things like that. And every once in a while I like to pull one out. Certainly was easier 5 or 6 years ago when my eyesight was better and my hands were steadier, but we'll see how I make out. So again, as I said, I'm going to do this in stages, and I'll come back to you when the cab is put together. Okay, here's the current progress on the build of the Wheelworks log truck. What you and I would call the cab assembly is done. They call that the main frame, and they call this the body. You and I would call that the chassis, and this the cab. Well, the cab is done, and I will tell you it was more challenging than I thought to get all the pieces filed to shape and size and held in place with ACC without gluing my fingers to it. Something that probably 7 or 8 years ago wouldn't have been a challenge was pretty challenging, but any little gaps, Squadron Putty comes to the rescue. Let me just zoom out a little bit in case you're not familiar with Squadron Putty. So when you're working on a kit like this, if you have any little gaps that you want to fill, you put some Squadron Putty in it. You have a little scalpel type of thing and smooth it off as best you can, and once it dries you can sand it. That's the nice thing about Squadron Putty. And then touched up the paint, and yeah, the cab assembly is done. Now we're going to glue that to the chassis and chassis, and then start adding the wheels. So I said the only thing I didn't think ahead on a little bit is I did want to put a little driver in there, but if you recall, I had to fashion my own steering column, and I guess I made it a little bit longer than the one they provided, so the steering wheel was protruding more into the cab. So unless I could find a really slim little person to get in there, I wasn't going to get anybody in. You rarely can get figures into these with their feet attached. You normally have to do a little slicing and dicing and just put the upper torso behind the steering wheel. But like I say, I got it to the point where I said the heck with it. But if you do ever slice and dice like that, don't throw the lower torso away. They're great for mini scenes. If you have a gas station or a garage where somebody's working on the car, you just have the feet sticking out from under the car. Or if you're more gruesome, I guess you could do an accident scene. But I've made the garage scenes with the legs of little people who are happily driving a vehicle someplace on the layout. So that's it right now, and I'll check back in again after we've added some wheels and see a little more progress. Okay, time for another update on the Wheelworks logging truck. Once you get the cab together, the rest of the construction is pretty straightforward. Just enough details on here to make it interesting. They do have the drive shaft and differential. They provided a muffler and a tailpipe. There is an engine, bottom of an engine molded in underneath the hood there. The wheels actually went on very easily, and overall it's shaping up quite nicely, and the basic unit is together. Unless I glued something in the wrong place, it does slope down quite a bit. I did flatten the springs on the rear wheels down as much as I thought I could, but I can handle that when with some scenery. When we get it on the layout, I'll have the front end raised up a little bit on a slight incline, and the whole thing will look more level. So what we're up to now is the log bunk, and these are the various parts for that. You have, again, the rear axle and 4 wheels that'll go on that. They'll axle be mounted on that spring. The drawbar that'll be connected through this hook. This will be glued on to the back of the chassis. That hook will go in there, and then here's the 2 bunks. And that should go together pretty quickly, and I'll start working on that now. They did provide some of the heaviest metal log castings that I've ever seen. I did give them a spray paint in case I was going to use it, but I think I'll go with some real wood. Tends to look pretty good when you get it. This is from back in New Jersey. We had plenty of mountain laurel trees on the property, and mountain laurel has nice HO scale bark on it, and I have enough of it left yet to use at least for this project. And then I have to look for some alternative. So yeah, we're getting down to the finish line now, and next update should have the log bunk completed and the logs in place. Okay, some more progress after a little while. You can see now that the log bunks and little trailer here have been completed. Earlier on, if you followed the steps in the instructions, they had wanted you to put the headlights and the bumper on. This is the bumper support, and this is the bumper itself. I want to paint the bumper with the stainless steel paint, and this little guy here that I'm pointing at is the horn. You're supposed to trim this, if you can see it, there's a 3rd prong kind of on the inside over here. I'm supposed to trim that down a bit and attach the horn to the end. I'll paint the horn the stainless steel also, and whether it makes it onto that little post there or not will depend on whether it goes flipping off into the netherworld when I pick it up, or whether I'm successful on that. But anyway, they wanted you to put these all on early on, and I could just picture myself as I'm handling this thing for the rest of the build, crunching that stuff with my clumsy thumbs. So I'm putting it on last. Then I'll touch up some paint, and then finally I'll put the log load on with some chains holding it down. So yeah, one more update and we should be done. Okay, this is the final product of the Wheelworks log truck. Turned out quite nice because of its error, time period that is, and so forth. I would have liked to paint that cab a nice shiny color, but the reality was they would have been black or gray. And so after I did the rattle can of paint, I took some dark gray craft paint and painted the cab unit. I did indeed fit the horn on, as well as the headlights and the bumper, and used real logs out of the yard. They're strapped on with some A-line chain, and I used their number 29218, which is 15 links per inch, which looks pretty good in HO scale. You can buy this pre-blackened. I buy mine brass, and then I blacken it by dipping it in a solution called Blacken It. And I don't know whether that's still available or not, quite frankly. It was available from A West. It's pretty much the same kind of stuff as you have for gun bluing, instant gun blue type of stuff. So you dip the chain in it for a while, you take it out and rinse it off good. And I have enough to last me the rest of my modeling lifetime, but as I say, I don't know if it's still available, but you can buy the chain pre-blackened. And all I did was glue a little piece of the chain on each of the bunks on one side, cut it long enough that it could strap over and got it out of the way, and then glued the logs on. The bottom two are glued to the metal bunks using gel type ACC, and the top one is glued to the other two using Aleene's tacky glue. And then once you get it on, you just start taking your chain that's already attached to one side and drawing it over and putting a dab of super glue every place it touches the wood, and then tuck it underneath the other side of the bunk, and it looks just fine. And so that's it. So if you've never attempted one of the white metal vehicle kits, and you find them used all the time, and of course Woodland Scenic still sells them and so forth too, so you can still buy current production kits. They are not bad, and as I say often, they give you a model that you would not find elsewhere. And you just assemble it using either 5-minute epoxy, or as I did with both gel type and liquid ACC. The whole thing basically is assembled with that. And as I mentioned earlier, if you have any gaps when you build your cab, you can fill those in with squadron putty, and once it's dry you can sand it and then paint it over again. And other than that, all you need is a flat file to take off what little flash there is. Some number 600 emery cloth is always a good idea to rub the parts on to get any, make them nice and smooth and get any last little bit of flash off. And you will need a pin vise, because you have to drill holes in the fenders for where the headlight supports go. You needed to drill a hole in the steering wheel. You needed to drill a small hole to secure the drive shaft, the steering column into the dashboard and so forth. So there was a few places you had to drill holes. But other than that, it is actually a lot of fun to build these little things. So give it a try. As always, if you liked the video, give it a like, and why don't you go ahead and subscribe to the channel while you're at it. Talk to you again.